live. We can make sure that we're all organized, and then on we come. I'm Annette McCoy, and with me, as always at this time of the month, is Janet Hickox.
Hello, Annette. It's great to be here.
So lovely to have you with me, Janet. And I've learned something this morning. I was only reflecting this morning about the steep learning curve, and oh my goodness, the first few times that we had shows and I couldn't get on and all of that kind of stuff. And then it becomes second nature. And I think that's something, Janet, that we can share with our audience this morning, that, oh boy, we can have steep learning curves. And then when we look back, we go, it becomes second nature.
Yeah, it does. And what's funny is that we can be so afraid that if we try something new that we're going to fall on our face, and then later we do it and we succeed and we look back and we go, why didn't we do that sooner?
Yes.
Oh, goodness.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm just fiddling with my screen here so that that's better. I can now see comments from people who might be watching through Angel Heart Radio. And we have Tracy from Missouri, and we have Debbie from somewhere else. How gorgeous is that? Welcome, ladies, and welcome to everybody who is watching. Now, if you would like to ask questions or make comments, we love both. You need to be watching us through the Angel Heart Radio page. So if you're watching anywhere else, switch over, go to Angel Heart Radio on Facebook, and you can come along and make some comments. And Debbie is from Florida. Wow.
My Debbie, my friend Debbie. I bet you anything.
Cool.
Ah.
So, Janet, today we're going to be talking about authority. Very interesting, given that I'm in Melbourne, Australia, with lots of authority going on at the moment.
Oh no, I don't even know what that means. There must be something big brewing there, huh?
Well, I must say at the start of the show that whatever I say here is purely my own opinion, and I give my opinions so that other people may go, oh, interesting point of view. Of course, how fortunate are we, Janet, that we all have the ability to weigh up information that comes our way and then make our own decisions.
And it's not easy these days, that's for sure. Because there's so much information comes in any given day. And I swear the world turns upside down 100 times a day.
Right. Yes. Very, very interesting times. So
very much.
Certainly given me a time to go within and seek my own truth. And I think that's, Mother Mary said months and months ago that this was actually a pause for us to do exactly that.
Right. And I think that's why I feel so strongly about sharing what I'm about to share with everybody, and what we really started last month, Annette, with my going into the more specifics of human design. I mean, we've talked about it before in sort of more generalities. Last month, we really dove into the type and strategy that's attached to a type.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I feel really strongly about this is because if everyone out there starts to live from their own authority and starts to live from their own strategy, then all of this other cloudy stuff that goes on around you kind of fades to the background, because you have a clear-cut way of making decisions for you that are correct for you, that are authentic for you. And all you need to do is practice living that way. And of course, it all begins with knowing yourself. And that's what I attempt to do with things like astrology and human design and gene keys and anything that I come upon that helps people to understand who they really are. So today our piece is about authority, which is a really important word, I guess, at this moment in time. That's one that we can redefine as your authentic truth. That is different, perhaps, than my authentic truth. That is possibly different from Debbie's or Tracy's or anybody else out there's authentic truth, right? And allowing each of us all to have the space to have our own beliefs and to live out our higher selves in the grand tapestry of life. So
Yes, but John has just said, own your power.
that's
Sums up what
another
you're
good way to
saying.
say it, right? In the end,
Yeah,
it's all semantics and it all means the same thing. Hold
true.
on to your sovereignty, perhaps is another word we could use, your authority, meaning your own authorship. And, we could words, right? All just words, but all those words mean nothing if you don't really know who you are. So that's why we begin with human design, because I think it's such an important piece in the grand scheme. And it's so easy to really understand once you get to it.
Right.
So, yeah. So today, one of the things that we're going to talk about is how to make decisions. How do you make decisions different from me and different from all of the other people that are out there in the world? So, how do you make decisions, Annette? And then maybe another ancillary question there is, how do you know that decisions you make are right for you?
That's a good one. I must admit, if I'm unsure about a decision, I let it sit. Ask my angels for guide,
Okay.
and then this knowing comes in. Like I used to know when I was traveling, and I'm sure I will travel again one day, but I would know whether it was time to book a flight, no matter whether it was for the next week or 7 months down the track. I would just have this knowing that, yes,
Yeah.
that was right for me.
Well, that's better than you telling me, oh, I think about it, I weigh the pros and cons, I analyze it to death, I critically think. Because literally, of all the answers that you could have said it out, is perhaps one of the closest to truths for you personally. Although we could pull up your astrology or your human design chart and look at that and see where is your true authority. But I can tell you that it isn't in your head. And that's what a
Right.
lot of people believe is right, that they're conditioned. All have been conditioned to believe that we need to seek authority outside of ourselves, right? We're seeking maybe authority from and direction from, at first, maybe it's from our parents, and then maybe our teachers,
Mm,
and then later our mentors or our the perceived authority people in the world. And later we're looking to our government. In a pandemic, we're looking to the governments, whether
right.
it's state or local or the federal level. So we're always seemingly looking for authority outside of ourselves. And
Can
that
I say, Janet, that was me earlier. And it's only I used to realize that my parents had a huge influence on me,
ah
even long into my adult life. And it was like, excuse me, how old are you? Make your own opinion. So yes, I can see that. Yeah, we can depend on others, and it's been a recent learning of mine to go, okay, what is it how do I feel about this?
what's really true for you or what's really
Yes,
true for
yes,
me.
yes.
Yeah. So
Mm,
that idea of the conditioned mind also has taken us into um, making decisions from the mind. And I can tell you unequivocally, there is not one person on the planet right now who is designed to make decisions from the mind. It's just not a
mm,
place of there's just no energy in the mind. There's awareness, there's inspiration, there's ideas, there's the potential to, compare and contrast and pull out data and memory banks and all of that. Uh, but there really is no power in the mind to make decisions. So today, when we take a look at authority, we're going to look at what is the personal decision making tool that each one of us has that works in alignment with our unique type and strategy, because the strategy for your type is the number one tool, right? That's
yeah.
a projector, for example. I can't remember, are you a projector?
I think I am.
I think you are too. And I get you and Anea mixed up. I think Anea is the manifesting generator, and I think you are the projector.
Projector.
And a
Mm,
projector's strategy is to wait for the invitation into the big things in life. So as long as you're waiting for an invitation and one forth comes forth to you, then you need to know, okay, so that's an invitation, but now how do I decide, is that right for me or not? Right? And that's different based on the authority that you have in your natal chart. And of course, I don't know what that is, but we all have a unique geometry, if you will, of how these components all come together and how they serve us or not. And knowing how it is that you're designed can really give you the in, if you will, to making great decisions. So it's almost like magic happens when you align with your type and your strategy, and then using your authority to make decisions. Now, there are pretty much 7 types of authority, and we're going to try to go through all of them today. So some people may have questions about that. And let me just say, for those of you listening, if you want to know what your own authority is, you need to get your own human design chart. And this is where I can shamelessly plug myself, because if you go to my website, which is www.living-astrology.com, you can request your free human design chart and a report comes with it. And some of these things will be discussed that are pertaining to you personally. So that's one way to do that. If you have already had your human design chart done, or you've already requested that, you probably will kind of have an affinity for some of this information. And Annette has graciously allowed me to share my screen today, so we'll have some visuals that are going to help us. So Annette, if I may, I'm going to share my first screen with everyone.
Absolutely.
And hold on here while I get that opened up. I want to go to solar plexus authority first. And there we go. What you all are seeing is a beautiful human design chart. And I don't want to spend too much time orienting you to the chart, but essentially this is the part that we are talking about, these different centers and what centers are turned on, which ones are not. And I'm going to give you a few keywords to know about. So first of all, this is called a body graph. And the body graph holds all of the energy centers for everyone. You all have all of the energy centers, and you all have all of these little numbered areas within those centers. These are called gates. And the gates are attached to one another via channels. And you see that there in this chart, there are some that are white and some that are colored in. If you have colored in centers, these are called defined centers. This is where you are broadcasting your own natal energy, your own authentic energy. And if you see white centers, and this, we have 4 of them here, this is where you're taking in the energy from around you, and you tend to amplify it and rebroadcast it. And this is where conditioning happens in a chart or in a person's life. And then we call these open centers. So if you hear me say open, it means white. If you hear me say defined, it's colored in. And of course.
Now, Janet.
Yeah.
I'm only seeing a very small diagram in the corner. I'm not sure what other people can see.
I'm sure other people are seeing the whole screen, but because you and I are in the Zoom session,
okay, that's cool.
You might have to broaden. You might have to go to the bottom. Is it the bottom corner or the top corner and ask it to show you the whole screen?
Okay.
I can't quite tell because on mine I can look at the whole.
That's okay. I just thought I would.
But maybe ask one of the listeners to check in with us.
I know. I'm waiting for
Let's hope that they're seeing the whole screen, and then you and I in little boxes, the Janet and Annette boxes. So while we're waiting to hear from one of you listeners on whether you're seeing the whole screen or not, I'm going to go on and describe this a little further in that you see.
Can I just butt in just for a moment?
Yes, you can.
Because Anaya is thinking that we cannot see John's comments, and we can see John's comments. So thank you for this technology. It's wonderful, isn't it?
I love it. And sometimes we have this love-hate relationship with it, but all in all, think of all the things that we can do with each other now that we couldn't do, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's amazing.
All right. And thank you, Anaya. She has said they can see the whole screen. So that's fantastic.
Perfect. Ooh. Perfect. So when we are talking about authority, we are
Yes.
talking about what of the centers in the lower part of this body graph are defined. And that's because authority in a human design chart can only come in below the neck, right? Nobody really has any kind of authority in their head, although there is one projector type that sort of does, and we'll talk about that. And the throat is a gearbox. It really has no energy for any kind of authority. So everything below the neck down here can be authority. And like I said, there are 7 authorities. The 7 types of authority are emotional or solar plexus, and that would mean it's coming from this area of the chart. This is called the solar plexus. And if
Right.
it's defined or colored in, by default, your authority is emotional or from the solar plexus. So you can see this chart here, because it's colored in, no matter whatever else is colored in, it defaults to being the authority of this person's chart. Now there's also sacral authority, and this is the sacral center. And in this particular chart, we won't have sacral authority because we have emotional authority. And I am going to go through charts for each of these. So I'm just going to give you that cursory sort of overlook at them, or look over at the moment. And the sacral center is colored in red if you have it defined. If you're a projector, a reflector, or a manifester, you have this open. It would not have any color in it at all. So you could not have sacral authority. Then there is splenic authority. The spleen is a center over here, and in this particular chart, it's open. There's no color here, so it is non-defined, and therefore this chart cannot have splenic authority. But if this is colored in, it's sort of this brownish gold color, and
Mhm.
that would tell you you had splenic authority. There's also the heart or ego authority, which is very interesting and not very common. And it is from this center here, which we call the heart center, the will center, or the ego center. And some people have none of these down here colored in, but they have an identity center colored in. And that would mean they have self authority or self projected authority. Some people might have a chart where only the top 2 centers are colored in. They have no real authority down here in the body. And so we would say they have environmental or mental authority. And I almost don't want to even use the word mental in this because that might make you think your mind holds the authority, and it does not.
Mm.
So we'll talk about that again, a rare kind of authority. And finally, we have lunar authority, which is really to say you have no authority whatsoever. Not one of these centers is colored in. They would all be white. And I ran across somebody like that today. Less than
Wow.
1% of the population or less has that. So it's rare. But when it happens, that person's authority can only be given to them with a 28-day cycle of the moon, because that's the only way in which they can really see themselves clearly. So in reality, it's not really considered authority. It's just a time wave that they're wading through. So
And so, Janet, a person like that, does that mean that they find making decisions for themselves very difficult?
it means that in a world that is in a rush to have you make a decision, they may have a very tough time, because
Uh,
literally it takes them so much more time to make a decision, a good decision. Now, people can make decisions every day as quickly as they want to. It's about
mm,
whether you want to have success in your life, if you want to feel good about those decisions and be in the right place at the right time with the right opportunities. So, yes, they can have a little more difficult time because most people might be worried about having to wait that long in order to come to a decision. But now we're not talking about little decisions like, do I want to wear red or do I want to wear green today? We're
right.
talking about, should I take on this job? Right? Or should I
Mm,
move across the country? Should I move to another country? Should I buy a house? Should I sell my house? Should I get into a relationship? Should I get a divorce? Those are the big things in
yep,
life that require a lot of extra time if you happen to be a reflector.
right.
So,
Hmm.
yeah, good questions. I love your questions. How's everybody doing out there? Are we hearing any questions from anybody in the audience at this point?
We're not getting questions. John loves being able to make comments, and so it's very, very good. He said it feels very true. So
Good,
there you
good, good,
go.
good. So let's look at solar plexus authority. Now remember, this is this is a side benefit, what can I call it? A side tool, an extra tool on the tool belt to help you make good decisions. It isn't the only way for you to make decisions because, of course, first comes your strategy that's based on your type. So if you missed last month's conversation, you likely have to go back to Annette's shows last month with me and catch up a little bit. But it's basically your strategy tells you what it is that is your first line of defense in making the right decision. Then comes your authority. Now, in a chart like this is a chart of a generator, and the generator type has a strategy of responding to what shows up in the outer world. But
Mhm.
because this is a chart with emotional authority, that decision-making process is slowed down a bit because decisions in the solar plexus operate with clarity over time, sort of in a wave form pattern. So anybody who has solar plexus authority, and about 50% of the people out there do, then your big decisions come with that clarity over time. So patience is the key with this kind of
Mhm.
authority. These people are not meant to be spontaneous in no way, shape, or form. There is no truth in the moment for them. That means if someone were to come to this person and say, would you, consider being employed in my place of business? They may think in the moment, yes, I would love to, right? A steady paycheck, a this or a that or whatever. And they may be very tempted to say yes in the moment because, for one thing, they're responding to something that shows up in their outer world. But the authority suggests you need more time for clarity because you do
Mhm.
not have truth in the moment. And that really comes because emotions flow in waves. If you guys can see my little picture, I'm, flowing like waves on the beach because you have a time where your emotions are on the rise and you're feeling good, perhaps at the height here, and you're happy and joyful. And then maybe as the day wears on, you get tired or you start to get a little feeling of blueness or down or, depressed or whatever you want to call it. And you're in that low part of your wave. So you could be tempted to either say yes from the high or no from the low, and neither one would really be the truth. So you have to wait out your emotional wave. And that means no decision is made for you without at least 24 hours worth of time. That goes from the time the opportunity is extended or the thing is that's coming up that you need to make a decision on. And here's something else that's not exactly fun. And I have emotional authority, so I know how this works, guys. You don't always have absolute clarity, right?
Mhm.
People who with emotional definition do not always have absolute clarity. So discernment is your
Mhm.
best friend, discerning your own emotional wave, how you feel. Like I once charted my own wave, and I realized that in the earlier part of the day, I am much more apt to say yes to things,
Mhm.
even if they're not the correct things for me, than I am later in the day. It's almost like I have a little more patience later in the day, maybe because I'm a little more tired later in the day. And so I'm less likely to make a big decision late in the day than I am in the early part of the day. So now I'm really aware of that in my own life.
And I was thinking, Janet, how useful is this information when we know the type of authority? So we know that if we're in that 50%, that yes, to consider a decision for 24 hours makes far more sense than rushing in.
Absolutely. And guess
Mm.
what? If you do not have clarity at the end of that 24-hour period, it may just not be either it's not the right opportunity, and so therefore your answer must be not now,
Mm-hmm.
or the timing is off, right? It isn't the right time and or the right people haven't come together yet to make this an absolute. So you could always say to the person, I don't have clarity around this at the moment, but if you will, ask me again in a few days or the next time
Mm.
this opportunity comes up, because you don't want to say yes just because you feel like if I don't say yes, this opportunity is never coming back,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
that's often what we feel. But what is truly yours, the universe will never withhold from you. Right? So if this was truly yours, this was truly
Mm-hmm.
the right opportunity, it will come back when all of the key ingredients, timing and people and opportunity come together in divine right timing.
That
So,
is such an important point.
yeah,
That, yes,
absolutely.
yes. To
It,
have that trust and belief is so important.
absolutely. And trust, you said the big word. You're going to hear me say that in other types of authority here for today
Hmm.
as well. Now, all types except reflectors can have this kind of authority. So a projector, a manifester, a generator, or a manifesting generator can have this kind of authority. Reflectors, because they have all open centers, they're all white, they cannot have that kind of authority. So that's the only type excluded from this. And literally, they don't have any authority anyway. So they're completely different creature. So that can tell you that you really need to have your design, your chart in front of you to know if that is your authority or not.
Hmm.
Now, there's something else to be said about this. Waiting for clarity on whether something is right for you can hold an additional benefit. And that is the more sometimes that you hold yourself back, the more that the other person is really trying to draw you in, and it can make you more alluring, maybe more appealing to people because you are holding yourself to an emotional wave. It's really kind of an interesting thing that I've seen happen in my own life, that people are trying to draw me in, and I'm not playing a game with people either. I'm just saying, okay, wait, I don't have clarity yet.
Hmm.
So that happens to people with emotional authority or solar plexus authority all the time. It's just kind of fun. Um, all
This
right.
is fascinating.
Yeah, I love this whole thing. Right now, I'm going to see if I can. If will this let me go? If I click on it, no. All right. What does that do? All right, I'm going to have to stop sharing so that I can go to share my screen yet again with the next authority. And the next
Right.
authority is called sacral authority. And by the way, I got permission today from people to be able to share their charts. I noticed though that when I did this, I was able to get the charts without their names being splashed on the page. So for those of you who I called or texted and asked if I could use your chart, you may not even realize I'm using your chart. So, but that was just, I didn't know that that would happen. So here we go. So sacral authority happens in
Yes.
a chart when the sacral, this piece right here, which is an engine in human design. We call it a motor, actually, not an engine. It's a motor, and it has an energy. It's always on. It's always humming in the background, so to speak. So only generators or manifesting generators could have this kind of authority, and we call it sacral authority. And it only happens in a chart when the solar plexus is open or not defined. So if you look at this chart, you see this person only has the identity center and the sacral defined. We don't have an emotional center defined. So this person truly has sacral authority. And sacral authority is felt in the body. It's felt, right? It's felt
Mm.
or it's heard through body sounds. And those sounds are usually responding to questions that end in a yes or a no. And they're usually sounds like, uh-huh, uh-uh,
Mm.
ah,
Mm.
those. So if you know somebody in your life who makes
Aha
those kind
moments, yes.
of that has those kind of sounds, right? They'll go, I wonder, or
Mm.
that sounds awesome. They probably have sacral authority, or they're a generator or manifesting generator who are in tune with the sounds that the body makes. So that and that really cues this person into what their body is going through, how their body is responding. And again, it can only happen for generators or manifesting generators whose strategy is to respond to what shows up in their outer world. So it can only be when they're in response that this sound kicks in or this body reaction kicks in. And it can only happen then to opportunities that they're responding to from that outer world, outside of their inner self. So often, as spiritual beings, we're praying or we're asking for guidance or we're going into meditation, and we may come out of those meditations thinking we know the answers, and what actions to take. But if you are a manifesting generator or a generator, and 70% of the population is, you are not designed to make decisions based on that inner voice. You're meant to make decisions for what shows up in the outer world. You're dancing with the divine in the outer world, not in the inner world. And so it's an interesting sort of problem, I think, that comes up because in our conditioned world, we're told to think about it, right? What do you think you should do? And that causes us to get into our minds. And that is definitely a difficulty for a generator or a manifesting generator because you're not meant to be in your mind.
Right.
Now, the sacral authority speaks in the now. It's very present in the moment. And it speaks. And if there's hesitation in what you get as an answer to something, it literally means ask me again later because the timing isn't right, or ask me in a different way, right? Maybe I didn't resonate. Somebody might come up to you if you have this kind of authority and say, how would you like to be a full-time employee at my business? Well, that isn't easily answered in a yes or a no. And remember, sacral authority responds in the uh-huh or the in the body.
Mhm.
And so if someone's asking you how, that's an open-ended question. And there's no to it, right? Now you're in your mind and you're thinking and you're, qualifying all of these things. So you could have the person, you could say, look, can you reframe that question for me so that I
Right.
can answer it with an or an And if you can't do that, if that doesn't feel correct for you or you're not comfortable, asserting that kind of courage in the world yet in how you assert your authority, then maybe you just ask the person to, call me back tomorrow, right? Let's chat about it at another time. Because if the sacral isn't engaged in it with either an or an then you're really not clear, right? And to say yes to
Right.
something in that kind of frame of reference means you likely aren't really going to be connected or committed to what it is that this opportunity gives to you. And so the best thing to do is to just have that person ask you in a different way. Now, many
Mhm.
people with this kind of authority struggle mightily with it. In fact, the person whose chart this is struggles with this particular kind of authority because the world doesn't always set you up for that. And then
Right.
you're often feel like you have to somehow justify why it is you're saying yes or why it is you're saying no. And certainly that isn't necessary, right? That is not your job. Your job is to really listen to what the body's saying to you and to really affirm that to yourself without thinking that you have to now explain that to someone who might be judging you for not doing what they want you to do.
And that
So
can be very difficult, Janet.
gosh,
That's
it is. It is very difficult.
mm,
Think about this in the context of maybe an authority figure in your life, a father figure or a mentor, and they're kind of wanting you to do something, specific, and you're saying, nope, this isn't the right opportunity, and you're like, what? Are you crazy? It's good
mm,
money. It's good thing. I mean, benefits. It's blah blah blah, right? And they don't get it, and they will pressure you. And if you allow yourself to be pressured in that way, you may succumb to saying yes to something that is absolutely incorrect and find yourself committed only half heartedly, or finding yourself having to backtrack later out of something because you committed in the wrong way or you committed to the
mm,
wrong thing. So, a lot of people with this kind of authority need to practice it first. And
right.
with your sacral body wisdom, try listening to your body when you're making decisions, simple ones. Should I drink water or should I drink pop? Coke, soda, right? Which one feels better? What is your body in the moment saying? Yeah, water's probably the better choice. Um, or maybe the desire in the body right now is to throw caution to the wind because you need some sugar and your body opts for the soda, but you won't know that till you practice this. And
Mm,
sometimes you can even enlist a friend, someone you trust, to ask you yes or no questions that are really sort of meaningless in the grand scheme of things to help you tune in to your body,
mhm.
right? Tuning into your body. So practice makes perfect, right? And then
Sure.
when the big things come along, as long as you don't think, oh, well, this is a big thing, it has more importance, I better be really sure. If you don't go to that thinking, which is in the mind, then you will make the right decisions for you. All right.
So you're mentioning a lot of trust and
Yes.
practice. And so if people are hearing this for the first time, They have to remember to be gentle with themselves.
Right. Good
Mm.
point. Be gentle, have compassion, because likely you're going to try and fail 100 times. I've done it. Hello, I am
Mm.
living
Oh,
here telling you that even just as recently as a month ago, I made a really poor decision based on a spontaneous reaction instead of waiting for clarity over time, even though I know better. So even I am still in this process of learning these things, right? And recognizing the effect that it has when you're living outside of your truth, right? This is about establishing your personal truth. All right.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next one. And again,
Yes.
is there questions or?
No. Do you know John Thaddeus? He said, use mine. I dare say. So you've got the charts worked out for today.
I
So
do.
John, my suggestion is tune in next month and
Or if we have time, I'd be happy to enter his information into my program and pull up a chart. So,
okay.
we've got a few left to get through and likely
We
only
have.
about
I
20
have a
minutes.
feeling we might even have to carry this over to next month. Who knows?
Who
We'll see.
knows? Who knows? Okay, so now we are going to move on to splenic authority. Now, the spleen here,
Mm-hmm.
colored in and therefore defined, and because the sacral is not defined and the solar plexus is not defined, this becomes the superpower or the authority here. The spleen is the oldest center in the body. And it
Oh.
arose in the very beginning of time, in the very beginning of our human destiny, in our human experiment here on the planet, as a way for us to survive. So we could tap into survival energy. So consequently, it is the center for survival, intuition, and instinct, and time. And the interesting thing here is that it is time also in the now. It speaks in the moment. So the spleen holds authority only when these two are not defined. If these have color in them, then you don't have spleen authority, even if it's defined. And I've seen
Mm-hmm.
people with all of these centers defined, right? All of them defined. And you're like, oh man, which one? Well, if the emotional center is defined, it is the power. And if that is not defined, then it goes to the sacral. And if the sacral is not defined, as in this case, it goes to the spleen. So here
Right.
we have this instantaneous recognition of what is right for you or not. And that might be the right people, the right environment, the right opportunity, the right timing. It is an element that would speak to this is safe for me. And
Mm-hmm.
it comes in the moment and it doesn't come back. So that gut instinct that, that when we talk about our spidey senses, like the hair on the back of your neck and you just suddenly
Sure.
turn away and you walk the other direction. That's the kind of splenic authority that we're talking about in the moment. There's a feeling, a knowing, like you were speaking of in the beginning today, a knowing
Mm-hmm.
absolutely that I need to turn left here or I need to get out of this person's way, or,
Right.
that is where I need to be. That is who I want to be with. And it comes in the moment. The problem is it speaks softly. It's not like this loud voice of God saying, do this, right? It doesn't come that way, or else this would be much easier. No, it speaks softly and it doesn't come back. And we expect sometimes, I think, in our conditioned world and our conditioned selves to believe that if it's meant for me, it's going to keep
Mm.
nagging at me, right? It's going to keep coming back. It's going to keep saying, do this, go there,
Yep.
call her, do that. And that's not how this particular center works at all. So
Oh,
we have to
wow.
always, if you have splenic authority, you always have to stay in the present moment. You
Mm-hmm.
always have to stay tuned into your spidey senses, Spider-Man, those spidey senses. And you have to be in your body. It's critical to be in your body and not, you know, wandering around somewhere out there, right? You have to be very grounded in your body, and it's critical for your thriving on this planet. I was going to say originally that it was critical for your survival, critical for your um, safety, and I thought that was a little bit dramatic. but it is critical to your thriving, right? To being in the right place with the right people, with the right opportunity and the right timing. So if that is your authority, you listen when it speaks and don't allow your mind or emotional needs or the desires or pressure from other people to dissuade you, right? Or to tell you different or to cause you to second guess yourself. Because in that moment, your spleen is talking turkey directly to you, right? It's right direct to you. Decisions have to be made in the moment. These people, unlike the emotional center where I said it's clarity over time, these
Sure.
people are in the moment, right? In the moment. And if you're not in the moment is gone. And now things get cloudy or get murky, get difficult to tease. Right now, you're really tempted to get into your head and to start thinking about and qualifying and comparing and contrasting. And finally, it's so difficult to clear through all of that. You don't make a decision or you make the wrong decision. So, here in this one, it is uber, uber important for you to trust in your body and your soul's wisdom, right? Your inherent wisdom.
So how, as I said before, how effective to know which one we are. It will make so much more sense when we think back to when we've made decisions and how they've turned out.
Doesn't almost feel like a weight lifted off your shoulders. Like as soon as you know, I've always thought I needed to do this and making decisions like this, but my mom talked me out of that. Or my upbringing was, no, you make decisions when you think about things over the long term. And then, of course, that pulls you out of being in the right timing for your own personal life. So, again, generators can have this. No, generators really can't. This is really pretty much, yeah, I guess they could. Reflectors absolutely cannot have this. We see a lot of projectors with this kind of authority, splenic authority. And then we have our manifestors. Manifestors present us with a little bit different kind of authority. So I'm going to stop sharing again. And I hate that I have to do this, guys, but such is the case. I'm sure there's another way.
We get a chance to see your beautiful face, Janet.
Thank you. Let's go to this one, ego authority. So ego authority, and that sounds really bad. I know as soon as I said it out, the words came out. I'm like, someone's going to say, we are not supposed to be in our egos. Well, that isn't always true, right? Manifestors are one of the only types that can have ego manifested authority. Now, this center right here, this little red center, only 1/8 of the population has this defined. So it's rare enough as it is. And when you couple that then with having manifestors that have this as their authority, we're getting a smaller percentage of people. But this is the chart of one of my clients, and she is very definitely a manifestor with ego authority. And it's all here in the words that you say. Now, not because she has a defined throat center, it doesn't have anything to do with that, but it has everything to do with her will being expressed in the moment through the words coming out of your mouth. So no script is necessary. Like if you're in an interaction with somebody and you think you have to have a conversation with them, but you want to go away and you want to think about it and you want to go through some kind of processing with that in your own self, that is not truth for a manifestor. A manifestor speaks in the moment and with this kind of authority. And then with this kind of authority, when they hear their words, right, the words they say coming out of their mouth are their truth. And it's, like I said, one of the rarer types. So it's not going to be something that you see with a lot of people. It is their voice speaks and they follow. And if they don't follow, then they find themselves in the wrong timing, wrong place, etc. Right. So it's all in the words in the moment. Now, projectors can also have this kind of setup in their chart. It's rare and I did not find a chart for that. So I'm just going to show you here what that would look like. It would be a connection just to these two, right? Forget about anything up above, but the connection right here is what we would see. No sacral center, no spleen, no solar plexus would be defined. It would only be these two centers. They could possibly have the head center or even the throat center defined, but they wouldn't be included in the authority for that type of a person. And this is a very rare projector, right? Very rare. And it only happens with this one channel being defined, which this person happens to have. But she's a manifester because this energy makes it all the way up to the throat center. In a projector, it wouldn't happen that way, or else they would be a manifester, right? So, and I know that just don't get caught up in all of that, but just know this is a very rare type, and these people must follow their strategy, or they risk getting lost in all of the openness that they would have around them. They are the ones that would really have to be self-centered. Have you ever heard of the acronym WIFM? WIFM, WIIFM. What's in it for me? That is a great question for people who would have this kind of authority, because it all comes down to, what do I want? You know, what's in it for me? If I said that's what I want to do, and I said yes, what's in it for me? And I know a lot of people might take that and think that it's selfish, but it really isn't selfish. It's being self-centered, and it is indeed the authority of these very rare people. It is to do or not to do. That's the question, based on what it is they want and what's in it for them. Is the energy expenditure worth their time, worth their effort, worth their money? And is it something that they really connect with on a heart level? Both of these types, though, both of these types of authority must balance their lives very carefully between work and play, because this particular energy center is the center that can create heart problems, literally, or burnout, right? Adrenal burnout, because it is a center that can, when it's defined, where people can keep pushing, right? They can keep trying and enduring and persevering, even when everything else around them is telling them, stop, right? They don't want to give up. So, and this is another center, or the other energy in the center is about keeping their promises, keeping their word by committing to the right things, right? It's very important here, or else they suffer in their life, in their relationships. So luckily, a rare one, not very many of you out there will have it. Like I said, one of them, I couldn't even find a chart of anybody I'd worked with in the past. I couldn't even find a sample of one online. I was looking, and I couldn't find it. So there's that one. Now, if we go to another sort of rare one called self-projected authority. Let me go to my screen here. Self-generated authority. Did I open that? There. Are you seeing a chart?
I hope so. I'm still only seeing it.
Oh, that's right, because you're
seeing one though, so obviously it's up.
okay. So this is, I had to go to my son and ask him if I could share his chart, because he's the only one I knew of right off the top of my head that had this kind of authority. And it's called self-projected authority, and only projectors can have this kind of authority. And in this kind of authority, they really, sort of like the ego manifested, they really have to listen deeply to what they're saying. Right? They have a powerful identity. Their identity center is the seat of their authority, and that's the home of the soul. And they really have this identity that speaks for them in the invitation process. As you may remember from last month, projectors are the type whose strategy is to wait for the invitation into the big things in life. And once that invitation is given for someone with this kind of authority, the truth comes to them through their own identity, through their voice. So they have to trust what they hear themselves saying. So for them, it's super important to have people around them that they love and they trust, so that they can discuss with them their thoughts on something, and their thoughts around, would this make them happy? Is this a good opportunity? Does it make sense? And all of those kinds of things, because it's when they hear themselves saying these things out loud that they know their own truth. And it was funny, when my son was growing up, especially when he got into his, late teens and, was getting ready to fly the nest kind of time. Um, he would sit down with me. He would just come and sit down with me and we'd have these conversations, only I wasn't really conversing. I was listening to what he was saying, and he could literally go through this process of a conversation and in it come to his own answer just like that, because he
Mm-hmm.
hears what he's saying and he's like, there's my truth, right? There it
Yep.
is. And one question they can always ask themselves if you have this kind of authority is, will this make me happy? Right? Because that's the important piece, right? Will this make me happy? And I
Right.
remember the way that he was using this was he had an opportunity to move to another island here in the same area, but it was a big move because literally you have to take a ferry back and forth to the mainland. And he wanted to know, he wanted to hear himself talk about whether that was a good choice for him to make. And
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, it was. And, that conversation, as heartbreaking as it was for me to think of him leaving, to go that far away, which really
Mm-hmm.
isn't that far, but seemingly so, he was able to hear his truth in his words as he was discussing it with me.
Mm.
Now,
And that can quite often be the case. We use people as a sounding board, as much as we might think that we're ringing for advice, but it's a sounding board, and we will hear our own. So often I hear myself go, oh, thank you. Okay, I can hear what I'm saying myself. I've
yeah.
worked it out.
However, if you are not a self-generated authority, if you are an emotional authority, let's say, and I don't know for sure what you are,
Mm-hmm.
but if you had that kind of authority, you still could not make the decision based on what you hear yourself saying.
Mm-hmm.
You would still
Right.
need to wait for that clarity to come through your emotional field,
Mm.
assuming that you had emotional authority. So
Right.
it's really important. That's a great way to gain clarity perhaps around something for you if you have emotional authority. But the main decision comes when you have clarity over time.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So good. Thanks for bringing that one up. Now, there are such animals as mental projectors. This is the one that I was saying was kind of tricky. And
Right.
it's tricky precisely because it's someone who only has the connection to these two centers. So everything that you see from here, the neck down, is white, and they only have the head
Wow.
center colored in yellow. And let me see, did I have a picture of that? Let me see if I did. I thought I did. Uh, mm,
While you're doing that, I'm going to say hello to Gabby. Thank you for joining us.
oh, this isn't them. Okay, it can happen that way too. Okay, so it can happen one of two ways. I forgot about this one. It can happen
Mhm.
from head to ajna, or it can happen from ajna to throat. But either way,
Uh-huh.
there's no other centers. The identity is open, the will center's open, all of these are open. So in this case, the guidance comes from sensory input from the environment. So this is someone who feels good where they are, and that makes everything okay. So this is someone who maybe gets invited, a projector that maybe gets invited to interview for a job, and they
Mm-hmm.
go to the interview, and they, in the process, they're in this building and it feels creepy or it doesn't feel good, but the job offer sounds so awesome. But they would still have to defer to that environmental input that says this doesn't feel right, right? There's something not right here. And
Right.
they would have to ask themselves the question, is this environment correct for me? Because if it feels wrong, then the opportunity is wrong and they're never going to find the success that they were hoping for because it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
feel right. And unfortunately for them, because they have this mental component defined, they may then default to the mind, and the mind's going, you're being silly. There's nothing creepy about that building, right? Those people aren't creepy. And they can cut themselves out of listening to their wisdom because their mind has convinced them that they don't need to
Right.
listen. So they have to.
Mm.
It's right or wrong based on how they feel in the moment where they are, the environment. And then our last one, of course, is a reflector, which I do have a picture of, and I know our time is getting short, but I just want to show people how um,
Well, we
different.
have the ability of going over a little way,
Ah,
Janet.
oh, good.
Yes.
So
Anaya and Carol Ann will be on at 11:30. So everybody, if you're enjoying this, you can
hang in
stay
there.
on or grab yourself a cuppa and come back.
Grab your
Gabby's finding
water.
this very interesting, and I'm sure other people are too. I'm fascinated.
It is. It's a
It's
fascinating subject, and I could just go on and on
mm,
forever about it. Now, here we have, by the way, if I go back to the last thought about that other type before I switch the screen, even though it's good to have people around you whom you love and trust and that love and trust you, it might be good with that type of mental authority to not discuss too much about what's going on or about getting other people's input, because in the end, it isn't about what other people say or what other
mm,
people's opinions are. It's really got to go back to how you can use them as sounding boards. Like you brought that up. I love that's a great word.
mhm,
But ultimately, you have to default to how it felt when you were there. And the opposite can be true. What if you were there and everything about the environment felt so good, but maybe the job opportunity isn't quite what you thought you wanted? Like maybe the benefits aren't as good, or maybe the pay is less than what maybe you'd hoped for, but everything about it feels good. You have an affinity for the people, their environment is good, it feels good, it smells good, you would have to default to the yes in that case, right? Because
right.
everything of the sensory
Mm,
input is telling you this is the right place for you, and everything else would happen in its own time and place. Its
right.
time, yeah. Okay, so this is a chart of a reflector, very rare. Like I said earlier in the broadcast, only less than 1% of the people on the planet are reflectors.
Mhm,
Reflectors can only they can only see themselves clearly as a reflection of what other people around them are saying or how they're being. So, from their standpoint, then they need to have people around them that they trust. Because if they fall in with the wrong crowd, then the reflection then isn't a good one and it can really undermine their health.
mm,
At the same time, people who are in groups or families, they should want a reflector within their midst, because that reflector's health is going to reflect to them the relative health of the community or the family or the group. So reflectors work both ways. It's like a mirror, right? They're always showing us
mhm,
the truth of what's going on around us. But they are literally what we would call lunar beings. And you see these lines here in these different channels. These are all called hanging gates. And a hanging gate acts as a magnet, and it's a one-way magnet. It can only attract the opposite side to it. So it is other people that will help them to see themselves clearly. Again, why they need to have really good people around them, because I'm telling you,
mhm,
if there's a reflector in the midst of a gang, and I don't mean a good gang like a violent gang, that the only reflection they see of themselves is that as being a gang member, that they're a
mhm,
part of that crowd. If they surround themselves with these loving beings, then that's how they see themselves. So it's really important for
mhm,
them to have the right people around them. And
mhm,
then, because the moon, the fastest moving planet or body or luminary that we have, makes this transit 28 days. In 28 days, it visits all 64 of these gates, because the moon really literally visits maybe 2 to 3 gates a day. That
mhm,
is another way for the reflector to see themselves clearly, because one after another in a very predictable pattern, every day, in the 28-day cycle is going to be hit with the moon at a different gate, and it's going to complete them in a different way every day.
wow.
Right. So for them to make a really good decision requires a waiting period of 28
8
days.
days. Mm,
Right? We're talking again, big decisions, not the little decisions. Should I go out to eat with my brother tonight? No, not that kind of thing. But the big decisions: should I move? Should I get into or out of a relationship? Should I take this job? Should I buy that house? Should I buy that car? The bigger things that we think of as decisions that we make. So
wow.
in reality, this type has to really slow down. They cannot let the world rush them, and the world will
Mhm,
try to rush them. Right?
wow.
Imagine telling somebody that you'll give them an answer in 30 days if you're going to marry them or not,
Right.
right? That might not go over well. But if you know yourself and you know that this is how you operate, And if that person is the right person for you, they're going to wait because they're going to see the value for you to have that clarity first, right? And if they're not willing to wait, if they start to rush you and push you, I would seriously question about whether that is the right relationship for you in the first place, right? So
fascinating, Janet. Now, Gabby wants to know, is there a site where we can get our chart ourselves? Well, of course there is. Janet, your
yes,
wonderful website,
yeah.
www.living-astrology.com. And Gabby, you and anybody else are able to request a free human design chart and have interaction with Janet.
And the report, it's a pretty good report for free. I mean, there's probably
Absolutely.
10 to 15 pages maybe that are going to go through your type and your strategy and your authority and tell you about the different centers and what, what that might mean if it's defined. Now, it's not going to give you the whole picture, just kind of the parts.
Yes.
But you can have a human design astrology reading, and that is where you and I would have the deepest interaction and be able to really explain to you the depth of what it is that you're here to do and who it is that you're here to be, your authority.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, this is Gabby's testing me. She wants me to type it in, and I'm not exactly sure that I can
Oh,
do that.
okay.
Well,
Hey, but you know what
I
I can do?
probably,
You know what I can do?
what can
I
you do?
I
Oh,
can share my screen again. And let's see, how can I do this in a way that works for everybody? Um, mhm. I don't have, let me do something really quickly here first in the background. And then I will, well, I don't want that one.
just pen. I am doing this. It's .com, isn't it, Janet?
Yes.
Yes, I have put it in there. Livingastrology.com.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
And so now, are you sharing the screen or?
oh, it's gone into the chat.
Oh, perfect.
So,
Okay.
yes, it's just that I can do that, but obviously if I'm doing that generally during the show, it's just
There it is.
distracting. So there we are.
There we go. So you see up here in the top in the address bar, it's living-astrology.com. And if you just scroll to the bottom of the page right here,
Right.
get your free human design chart and mini report. It's really not that many, 10 to 12 pages, as I said. Fill out the information. And I really do need birth date, birth time, and birthplace. Give me the city and the state you were born in if you live in the US. And if you are outside of the US, please, please, please give me the city and the country. I can't even tell you how many times I've had to do a Google search on a city and hope and pray it's the only one in the world and that I get the right country, because so many times people forget that part. Like
Right.
we do in the US. Hey, I come from Los Angeles. And of course, everybody knows that Los Angeles is in California, right?
Yes. No.
So we tend to think our own stuff is everybody knows about. So that's the website. That's how you get to it. And I'm always happy to share that information. And as well, stop sharing. There we go. As well, people can join me in the morning on YouTube at
Yes.
Living Astrology. That's the name of the channel without the hyphen, just Living Astrology. And I do a daily broadcast Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific. Now, I know that's pretty early for you all in Australia, New Zealand, and that area, but I do put that up on YouTube so you can go to it later and take a look at it. And we talk about the daily astrology, human design, gene keys. And this morning, we did lessons on the ascendant and what does that mean? So we take up subjects, metaphysical, spiritual, and all kinds. So it would be great to have new
Fascinating.
people join us there.
Gorgeous. Now, Gabby apparently sent in for a report a little while ago, but somehow the wrong day got put in. So
Let's see here, Gabby. What's your last name, Gabby?
Sorry, what was that?
What's her last name?
Forrester with a double R.
Forrester with a double R. Forrester. So hold please, because I take and I write down everybody who requests a chart.
My goodness.
Mostly because things like this happen, right? And I'm not
Right.
infallible. I would never even present myself as infallible. So, Gabrielle Forrester, there you are. I have 9/14/68 and at 1700, 5 p.m. in Geraldton, Australia.
Ah, a little Aussie.
A little Aussie. So
And
if that's not
Julie
correct,
King's saying hello too, which is very nice.
who?
Julie King.
Hi, Julie
She's
King.
saying hi to all. So
So
it's
if you
lovely
would
to have all
ask
of these
Gabrielle
people.
if that's the incorrect time or date, let me know, because it's possible even that I keyed it in incorrectly. That's never happened to me where I've hit the wrong keys and sent it out and went, oh yeah, it's done. So please correct me and I will make sure that you get the right chart, because you have to have the right chart or else you aren't living your true self.
So Gabby is saying the 14th is right. On my chart, it said the 13th.
Ooh, okay.
Maybe you two can
We can fix that. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, beautiful. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Janet, thank you for that plethora of information.
You are most welcome. Thank you for having me.
And of course, people can re-listen to this. You can even hold a watch party. If you've enjoyed it, invite your friends to come along and listen again to Janet and I. As I mentioned, Carol Ann and Anaya will be with you in about 19 minutes time. So grab a cuppa and come along and listen to them. And if you want to have interaction with Janet, of course, there is her Living Astrology show every Monday to Friday Pacific time. So that's Tuesday to Saturday for us here in Australia.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Oh, it's time. It's crazy.
Different days
and
even.
Janet will join me on the 4th week of August. My goodness me, next month. Oh, Janet.
Yep. That'll be August 26th.
Moving along.
Yeah. And I'll have a lot to talk about that day, because we'll be facing down the Mars retrograde cycle. And what is that going to mean for all of us? So we'll talk about that next month.
All right. Fantastic.
Yay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Joy.